A middle-aged widow living at Devbhog would often come to pay visits to Nagmahashaya and show herself off as a great devotee. But the secret and unchaste motive of the woman did not escape the keen insight of Nagmahashaya. He dismissed her for her wicked intention at such an advanced age. Learning of the motive of the widow, the wife of Nagmahashaya stopped her access to the house. Referring to this, Nagmahashaya said, "Alas, methinks even the vultures and dogs do not like to take the flesh of the despicable body, this cage of bone and flesh. It is a mystery to me how she became attached to this. Oh, in how many ways my master tastes me! Indeed, it is difficult for human beings to conquer lust and avarice. They can be subdued only through the grace of the Lord." At times the highest truths dropped from his lips in very simple and plain language. He would often say, "Abstinence from lust brings a man near to God." As towards a woman, so was his aversion towards money. Once a relative of the Pals was attacked with smallpox. When all kinds of medical treatment had failed to produce any effect, the Pals, who were well aware of the reputation which Nag Mahashaya had acquired in the department, asked for his help. Nag Mahashaya could not refuse them. He examined the patient and prescribed one homeopathic medicine which cured the disease. The Pals wanted to reward him with a big sum, but he refused to accept it. When they pressed him much, he began to cry like a child and said, "Alas, O Lord, why did you make me learn the low profession of a physician? Is it only on the account that I undergo such sufferings?" At the request of the Pals, he once went to Bhojeshwar. When he was going back to Calcutta, they paid him rupees 8 for his steamer fare and a good blanket to protect himself from cold. The steamer station was about 6 miles from Bhojeshwar. When he reached there and was going to buy his ticket, a woman with ragged dress and 5 or 6 children hanging on her came to him and, in a most piteous tone, brought to his notice her sufferings and privations. She asked for help. Hearing her story, Nag Mahashaya burst into tears and gave away the sum of rupees 8 and the blanket which he had got from Mrs. Pals with the words, "Mother, take this and save yourself and your children." The beggar woman blessed him and went away. Being fatigued with the long journey, Nag Mahashaya took rest for a while at the station. When the steamer had left the station, he resumed his journey towards Calcutta on foot, as he had no money left to pay for the fare. On the way, if he found any temple, he begged prasadam and at other times lived on parched rice. He crossed the rivers and streamlets on a ferry boat on payment of the fare when they were wide, but when narrow he crossed them swimming. He had only 7 annas and 6 pies with him. Depending on that small amount, he set out for Calcutta, and after a continuous walk on foot for 29 days, he reached the place. Once Nagmahashaya was in great distress for want of money owing to the suspension of the contract business. Occasionally, he had even to go without food. After a long time, the Pals dispatched 2,000 mons of salt. Nagmahashaya went to Khidirpur for the dispatch. Though the dispatch of 2,000 mounds of salt should have brought him at least 7 rupees, he could earn only 13 annas. He had also to sit in the scorching rays of the sun the whole day. While coming back, he met a man who told him of his miseries. Nagmahashaya gave him the 13 annas, his whole day's earning, and came back home with an empty pocket. That day he had not a grain of rice with which to appease his hunger. When Nagmahashaya was very young, the barking of a dog or a mewing of a cat would sound in his ears like the cry of the animal for food. Being much afflicted, he would say to his aunt, "Well, mamma, why does it cry? Why not give it some food?" Then he would himself carry food for it and say in very endearing terms, "Well, brother, don't cry any more. Here is food for you." There was a small pond attached to his house. When he was 13 or 14 years old, he used to go to that pond every day to rinse his mouth after dinner, with some rice and dal in his hands. He had some tame fish in the pond. They used to come at his call and take rice and dal from his hand. He would fondle them affectionately. Thus, before he came to Calcutta for his studies, he used to play with them. Nagmahashaya used to say that in birds and beasts also there is to be found some knowledge, and in the course of evolution they too will attain higher births and become free from all bondage. One summer morning, Nagmahashaya was smoking on the mandapam of his house when two wild magpies came flying and sat before him. Nagmahashaya did not notice them. To draw his attention, the magpies began to peck at his feet. He then caressed them fondly with his hands and said, "Well, mothers, you have come. Wait a bit. I shall give you food presently." Then he fetched some quantity of rice and fed them with his own hands. But their hunger was not yet satisfied, and so they began to stroll around Nagmahashaya. Nagmahashaya then brought some more rice and a little water in a cup. Taking their stand on his hand, the two birds ate and drank. When they were satisfied, Nagmahashaya caressed them with his hands and then bade them goodbye, asking them to go and play in the forest and come again the following day. The birds flew away. Nagmahashaya said, "Oh, who knows how Ramakrishna plays with his children and in how many ways?" Nagmahashaya was the living example of the quality of ahimsa. Non-injury is the highest virtue. This he followed in his life to the very letter. Some European officers of the jute mills at Narayanganj once came to Deobhog on a hunting excursion. Hearing the report of guns, Nagmahashaya came running to the European gentlemen and requested them with folded palms to refrain from such inhuman acts. As they could not understand his words, they began to load their guns to shoot at the wild birds. At this, Nagmahashaya showed indignation and ejaculated in a furious tone, "Do no more any such cruelty." The Sahibs took him to be mad and aimed their guns at the game without paying any heed to his words. Nagmahashaya suddenly jumped on them and in a moment caught hold of the guns as if the strength of 100 lions had possessed the feeble frame of Nagmahashaya. In spite of all efforts, the Sahibs could not release their guns from his grasp. Nagmahashaya took possession of them and went home. After keeping them in a safe place, he washed his hands for touching those deadly weapons. The Sahibs, after returning to Narayanganj, wanted to lodge a complaint against him. Meanwhile, he sent their guns back through a Bengali officer of the jute mills, who, in the course of conversation, spoke of Nagmahashaya's saintly character and his sincerity of purpose. This inspired in them a feeling of great respect and reverence for him, and they gave up the idea of going to court. After that incident, they never went to Deobhog for hunting. Nagmahashaya could not bear to see the sufferings of any creature. There was a small tank attached to his house where a large number of fish came and settled during the floods every year. One day, a certain fisherman caught some fish from the tank and according to the custom in vogue, came to Nagmahashaya to give him his due share. Nagmahashaya was greatly affected to see those fish struggling hard for their lives in the basket. He at once purchased them all at the price demanded by the fisherman and let them loose in the pond.